Chapter 1: The Town That Stopped Sleeping.
He came every 3 weeks. Not roughly every 3 weeks, exactly, with a precision that felt almost mechanical. The people of Texarkana, Texas, knew another attack was coming. They just did not know who or where. This is the story of the Texarkana Phantom Killer. Between February and May of 1946, a masked gunman attacked 8 people in and around Texarkana. 5 of them did not survive. The killer was never identified. No one was ever charged. The case has remained officially unsolved for nearly 80 years. Texarkana never fully recovered its sense of safety. To understand why this case became a legend, we have to go back to the night it all began.
Chapter 2: A Town on the State Line.
In the spring of 1946, there was a city that could not decide what state it belonged to. Texarkana sat precisely on the border between Texas and Arkansas. State Line Avenue ran directly through its heart. One curb in Texas, the other in Arkansas. 2 city governments administered the same streets. 2 police forces patrolled the same neighborhoods, each stopping at an invisible line. A crime committed on one side of the street answered to entirely different laws than a crime committed on the other. Beyond the city limits, dark country roads stretched for miles through pine forest and empty farmland. There were lovers' lanes, remote, unlit pull-offs, where young people parked their cars on weekend nights. The nearest those roads came to supervision was the occasional passing of another car. The population of Greater Texarkana in 1946 was roughly 44,000 people. Most of them felt entirely safe. But sometime in late February, a man carrying a weapon moved into those dark spaces between the streetlights, and 2 people survived long enough to describe what they saw.
Chapter 3: The First 2 Who Lived.
On the night of February 22nd, 1946, Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry parked on a quiet road just outside Texarkana. It was a Saturday night, and they were alone. A figure approached the car from the darkness. He was tall, and his face was covered by a white cloth mask with crude holes cut out for the eyes. He held a gun. What survivors remembered most was not the weapon. It was his voice. He spoke calmly, giving instructions, as though nothing unusual was happening. Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry were both attacked, both badly hurt, and both left for dead. They survived. Their fragmented testimony gave investigators the first description the world would have of the Phantom Killer. Texarkana had a face for the thing in the dark, or as close to one as it would ever get. The 2 survivors were deeply fortunate, because whoever stood behind that white mask had already decided that the next time no one would be left to describe him.
Chapter 4: The 3-Week Clock.
Sunday morning, March 24th, 1946. A passerby on a lonely road outside Texarkana noticed a parked car that hadn't moved. Inside were 29-year-old Richard Griffin and 17-year-old Polly Ann Moore. Both were dead. Investigators from the Bowie County Sheriff's Office arrived and secured the scene. The couple had been there since the previous night. Detectives began comparing the details of this attack against the one that had come before. The first attack had occurred on February 22nd. Exactly 21 days separated the two crimes. 3 weeks, almost to the hour. Investigators understood what this interval might mean, and the understanding was not comforting. If the Phantom operated on a schedule, then somewhere in Texarkana, a clock had already started counting down.
Chapter 5. The Night Paul Martin Ran.
On the night of April 14th, 1946, Betty Jo Booker and Paul Martin left a school dance in Texarkana together. Betty Jo was 17 and played saxophone in the band. Paul was 15 years old. Somewhere on a back road outside of town, the Phantom found them. But Paul Martin ran. He was found the following morning, more than a mile from where Betty Jo was discovered. The distance told investigators something new. The Phantom had given chase. He had hunted Paul Martin through the dark, through the trees, along those empty roads. Betty Jo Booker was found in a field off Richmond Road. Her saxophone case still in the car. 3 attacks now, Spring Lake Park, a rural road, and Richmond Road. Investigators began placing those locations on a map. Every crime scene fell within the same precise radius, as though the Phantom had never strayed more than he needed to, as though he knew exactly where the darkness was deepest.
Chapter 6. The Cryptic Letter.
In late May 1946, a letter arrived at the offices of the Texarkana Gazette. A second copy reached the Bowie County Sheriff's Department the same day. The writer claimed to be the Phantom Killer. The tone was theatrical, almost performative, as though the author had rehearsed every word. The letter stated plainly that he could not stop himself. He wrote that something was happening inside his mind that he no longer understood. He warned, without ambiguity, that more people would die. Overnight, the manhunt shifted in nature. Investigators could no longer be certain whether they were chasing a criminal or decoding a performance. Linguists and law enforcement analysts studied the syntax carefully. No fingerprints were recovered that could be matched to a suspect. The letter was never definitively proven authentic, and it was never definitively dismissed.
Chapter 7. The Phantom Hits a Home.
Until the night of May 3rd, 1946, the Phantom had always struck on remote roads, in the dark, far from home. That illusion ended at the Starks farmhouse, 6 miles northeast of Texarkana. Virgil Starks, 36, was sitting in his living room reading a newspaper when the first shot came through the window. He died in his chair before he could stand. His wife, Katie, rushed from the bedroom and was shot twice in the face, but survived. Katie Starks crawled to a neighboring home for help. When deputies arrived, they found bloody footprints leaving the porch and disappearing into the surrounding fields. The Phantom had come to someone's home. By morning, hardware stores across Texarkana had sold out of deadbolts and window locks. Churches opened for midnight prayer vigils that week, and families who had lived in the region for generations left town. On May 16th, Sheriff Bill Presley told reporters that investigators had no suspects in any of the attacks. For the first time, in the silence that followed, the people of Texarkana began to wonder if they already knew the man they were afraid of.
Chapter 8. The Manhunt in the Silence.
By late April 1946, the state of Texas had poured its full weight into Texarkana. Texas Rangers set up rolling patrols across Bowie County, working through the night. FBI agents from the Dallas field office arrived with resources the local sheriff had never seen. Checkpoints appeared on every major road, leading in and out of the Twin Cities. Over the following weeks, officers questioned hundreds of men, known sex offenders, drifters, veterans with troubled records. None of them held. Investigators administered some of the earliest polygraph tests ever used in a Texas homicide case. Every result came back inconclusive. Then, in the summer of 1946, the attacks simply stopped. No final confrontation, no deathbed confession, no name. The largest manhunt in Texarkana's history produced nothing but silence. Investigators were left with one unbearable possibility: that the Phantom had never left Iowa, that he had simply gone home.
Chapter 9. The Suspects and the Theories.
When the attacks stopped, the silence left behind a question that refused to go away. Who was the Phantom? Investigators had names. Several of them. One name that surfaced repeatedly was Ewell Swinney, a small-time car thief already in police custody by the summer of 1946. His wife Peggy told investigators that Swinney had committed the murders, but Peggy Swinney could not be compelled to testify against her husband under the spousal privilege law. Without her testimony, the case against Swinney could not be built. A second theory pointed toward a drifter passing through the region, someone no town ever fully sees. Some investigators noted that the attacks fit a pattern seen in other southern states during the same years. That theory explained the sudden silence. A traveler moves on, but it explained almost nothing else. Texas Ranger Manuel Gonzalez spent decades returning to the Swinney theory, convinced in his bones that it was the answer. Gonzalez died in 1970 in Vivastra, and he never found the proof. But somewhere in the archive of this case, investigators believed, there was still one document that had never been fully explained.
Chapter 10. The Phantom Never Named.
The Texarkana Moonlight murders officially remain unsolved. The FBI's investigative file on the case is sealed. No arrest was ever made. No suspect was ever charged. Texarkana still flinches when the story surfaces. Survivors of the spring of 1946 carried what they knew until they died. The attack stopped abruptly in May 1946 and never resumed. Investigators never established a definitive reason why. If the Phantom was a young man in 1946, he likely lived well into the latter half of the 20th century. He likely lived among the very people he had terrorized. He was never made to answer for what he did. The case is still open, the identity still unknown. So, who do you think the Phantom was? And does the pattern of the attacks tell us something investigators missed?